Welcome back to Make It Make Sense with Tomee Sojourner-Campbell. Today, our guest is Tyler Downey, president of SEIU Healthcare based in Canada, and also Tyler and members of SEIU Healthcare have done a lot of fantastic work over the last several years. But in particular, I'm going to be talking to Tyler today about the power of using documentary storytelling to tell the stories of union members. And one of the main reasons why is because SEIU Healthcare has put together a lovely documentary called Endless Shifts, Stories That Keep Care Alive. And it showcases the stories and the commitment of members to patient care and community care. And so from there, we're going to launch our conversation. So welcome, Tyler, to have this conversation with me today. I'm really happy that you're here. I wanted to start off by just giving an opportunity to just hear your thoughts around the power of storytelling and the power of documentary filmmaking as a way for union members and the labor movement in general to get the stories out of members to the general society.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on to share some of my experiences. So, I guess I'll just start with why we've decided to, and we've always been a union that has used storytelling as a tool to advocate for members and our members and workers generally in the province of Ontario. There was a time I come from uh, low income. We lived in Toronto community housing, right into my 20s. So most of the Toronto community housing and around Jane Street, from Jane and Steeles all the way to Jane and Bloor, we've lived there at some point in my life. And part of what was the common denominator was the struggle. So everybody struggled the same. Um, but it was almost like, and I felt this when I was in my teenage years, it was almost like they didn't have a voice. Like we just didn't have a voice. We didn't really matter. The we were almost in a bubble, and the only way you got out of the bubble was if you moved or you got an opportunity to go somewhere because you had a friend or something. Like it was really like if you're on Jane Street, you're Jane Street. But one thing was clear is that um, I saw people who had like super strength. These were superhuman beings, people juggling two or three jobs. My mom juggling three jobs and four kids, and still making it, meals on the table and church on Sundays, and having the routine. And I always was wondering, like, okay, why does it feel like we have no say on what happens in our communities? And so, as I got older into my early 20s and started organizing and started working on like tenant issues, and realizing people were being silenced um, because of what they look like. That's really what it boils down to. And so here in the union, part of what's important for us is to always make sure that our members' stories are front and center of how we advocate. And I'll give you one clear example. There was a time when no one was talking about home care workers. No one. I mean, you had some small groups maybe doing some advocacy, and I'm probably going back, 14, 15 years ago. Um, you know, and we always knew that the future of care delivery in this province and this country, frankly, was going to be in the home setting. And
Yes.
so as, standards remain low, you can't attract people to low standards. I mean, you got to raise the standards so that people want to be attracted to working there. Um, and so what we did was we put a real concerted effort to get stories from, support workers to tell the truth about the work that they do. Because back then, people thought home care workers were just housekeepers. Like, we just, people that clean houses and, provided meals for people. And they didn't realize they were actually delivering care. They were bathing. They were making sure they had a good setting. They were making sure that wounds were taken care of. Like support workers were doing all of this work, but nobody knew about it. And so we went on, it was probably about a 3 or 4 year run where We met with community groups, we talked with politicians, we had our members go down to Queens Park, a lot of our home care members for the first time speak to politicians and talk about their struggles as home care workers. And what happened in 2014, it was around the election time. The provincial government at that time ended up moving the minimum wage, which was one of our asks or demands at the time, from $12.50 to $16.50. And now, I mean, if you're in home care, you're probably in around 19, $20 an hour. So it's not great, but it's not $12.50. But it
Yeah.
all happened because of the stories that were told. It would all happen because of the stories of the immigrants that worked in home care, the women that were single mothers that were working in home care, delivering care. And so the power of storytelling is not just about, how do we just tell a story so people can hear? And yes, you can get some knowledge and understand it, but it's also how do we use that as a tool to create meaningful change for folks? And that's what we did in that example.
No, and I think that's an excellent example of how community voice is mobilized so that it's not only the single story, but it's the thread of where are people in their journey, the amount of work that gets done, quote unquote, behind the scenes in terms of personal support workers, as you're saying, and the fact that I think that the general public certainly needs to know more about that. And I do remember in 2014 hearing more about what was happening in healthcare outside of sort of doctors and nurses,
Yeah.
right? Because the fact that, as you're saying, the trajectory for home care even now is becoming the demand is going to increase, right? We're an aging
Yeah.
population, and those individuals who are doing that work um, should demand respect. They are getting more respect, and I think that part of that work that's happening that you're doing at SEIU Healthcare is really demonstrating that they're an essential service and they deserve and need to be compensated for their time, their efforts. And our communities, in terms of our healthcare, dependent care, would not be able to do what we do, and people would not be able to, quite frankly, go out to do the work that they're doing without that backbone.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I right and the support that's there. And so I think with the telling and sharing of stories, as I look down to from the end of 2025 and going into 2026 and beyond, do you feel from your own perspective that there are sort of themes that have emerged from the story from the recent documentary you did that could be used in a broader public education campaign as an example so that people not only understand but support the members when they need to have additional community support when they're lobbying for changes in health and safety and compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the documentary that you're referencing, Endless Shifts, stemmed from a visit that I had at a nursing home. And one of the members there, Janice, who I met and had a conversation with at the nursing home, she said, I've been in this work for 48 years at the same location, same place. And it just struck me. I was like, well, wait a minute, hold on, 48 years. That's a long time, So, okay, so tell me, what was it like? What did you do? How did you get through? And when I left there, I was like wondering, I was like, well, wait a minute. If she's been 48 years, I'm sure there's other workers out there, members of ours, that are just as long, and nobody knows anything about them. Nobody knows. There's no learnings. There's no passed down information to the next generation. And so I decided to bring my videographer Felipe together and say, okay, we got to do something to document these stories. And so what do we find? We found someone like Mina Harris she worked with my aunt for about 27 years in Jane and Finch at a nursing home there. She's still there, 51 years at that place, you know,
51. Wow.
51 years. And, for Mina, she got really emotional. I mean, they all got emotional during the docu-series and filming, because it was like we were interested in hearing their story. And
Yes.
here's the part of the story that we're gonna work on as the next iteration of Endless Shifts. And people will, you'll see it. So I'm just teasing it out here for you.
Okay.
Um, but why? Why did you have to work so long in healthcare? And what we're finding and what we're hearing is because they weren't able to retire. They weren't able
Yeah.
to retire with a decent wage or a decent retirement plan. I mean, they might have, the nursing home pension plan or a hospital pension plan, which will give them some level of income, the CPP. But if you're a home care worker, forget about it. I mean, you almost have nothing going for you in home care. And so it's stories like that that we're going to highlight more of on the reasons why folks are not able to retire at that golden age of 60 or 65. We have a member, she loves me, so I can say her name, Millie, um, 70, 78, 79, and still going. Still a
Wow.
healthcare worker, PSW, I mean, she loves what she does, obviously. But she just can't afford to go and not work. And that's what our society is seem to be coming in the healthcare space. And so it's things like that that we're going to try to lift up to the top and hear stories of workers and our members who just can't afford to leave work. They have to work into their later years, which you know, I'm not sure that's the type of society we want as Canadians. We shouldn't normalize, workers working into their 70s. Like that shouldn't be a normal thing. People should be able to work up until a certain point and retire and have a dignified retirement. Especially folks who have given 48, 51, 52 years to their profession.
I agree with you. And the fact that, I think in terms of the advocacy and the lobbying around people understanding what is involved in being a personal support worker, right? It's the toll it takes on one's body,
That's right.
and the amount of work that gets done, and also the things that might be going around in terms of the interpersonal relationships and the way that people get treated and mistreated, and some of those more challenging, difficult conversations.